So I've started a little tutorial here on just making a simple white bread. Nothing fancy, 4 ingredients using yeast. We'll get on to sourdough at some other point. Mainly this is for my mother and father who asked me to do a little test on how to make bread. So I just have 2 mixing bowls. I haven't decided on what yeast activator I'm going to use. You can use anything that's sugar-based, honey, cane syrup, just cane sugar or molasses. It's really the flavor profile you want. You have just normal everyday active yeast, ground red hard wheat, makes just really good bread flour, and of course non-iodized salt. The iodine in normal salt can slow the yeast reaction a little bit. It isn't going to kill anything, but it does slow it. I also have a temperature gauge for my water and a sifter. One other tool that I do like to use is a dough whisk. Makes it nice and easy to mix everything together. Most of it's done with your hands afterwards, so you don't really have to worry about it. Yeah, so I'll get set up and we'll get started. So the first thing I want to go over is the recipe. I do everything by weight now. It just makes things a lot easier because cups can be of different volumes, but this is going to be for a single loaf. I'm going to start with 500 grams of flour. The hydration level, 70%. So this is just called baker's math or baker's percentages. If I want 70% hydration, I just take the 500 grams of flour and multiply it by 0.7, gives me 300 grams of water. For a single loaf, you want about 2% of that flour weight to be salt. So in this case, it'd be 10 grams of salt. And 1% of it to be yeast. Usually they say anywhere between 0.7 and 1% for your yeast. I just use 1% because it's easier. Now the sugars are really going to depend on the flavor profile you're trying to get, whether you want it to be more acidic or sweeter. The more sugars you add, of course, the sweeter the bread will be. It does make the dough tackier to work with, the more sugar that you add, however. Technically, just to make bread, all it needs to be is 1% of the weight of the flour to activate the yeast. That's literally all you need to make bread. It would be a really kind of unflavorful white bread, kind of like a sandwich bread, but you can do it with just 1% of the weight of the flour. For my loaf, I'm going to use that 1% as cane sugar to make the yeast active. And I'm going to add another 4% honey, which is 20 grams, to give it a little bit more flavor profile. But all of this can be done, of course, no problem. To do 2 loaves, it would be, of course, 1,000 grams of flour. 1,000 grams of flour, then you just do your multiplying percentages to get how much water you want. Anywhere between 70 and 80% has seemed to work well for me. And then, of course, everything increases with that percentage as you go to make more loaves. So for your water, the best way to activate the yeast is you want it somewhere between 100 and 110. Right now it looks like I'm just under 110, which is perfect. Technically, as long as you don't go over 120, you won't do any damage to the yeast. But the warmer the water is, the faster the yeast will activate. So I have my water, and we're going to start mixing. So I'm going to go ahead and move some of this out of the way. This is the honey I'll be using and the sugar I'll be using. No cane syrup, no molasses this time. So the first thing we're going to do is we want to activate the yeast. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a scale. Any digital scale will really work. Take your small bowl and zero it out. That way you're not worried about the weight of the bowl. Now remember, by our recipe, I just want 5 grams, which isn't very much, of cane sugar to activate the yeast, which 6, that's close enough. So we have 6 grams, and now I know that I need 350 grams of water. So I'm going to go ahead and zero the scale again. We're going to work on 350 grams of water. 351, close enough. And then we're just going to mix the sugar into the water until it dissolves. This cane sugar takes just a little bit longer than granulated sugar. That's good right there. So we're going to zero out our scale again. And we know that we need, to hit our 1% mark, 5 grams of yeast. So this is just normal active dry yeast. Like I said, when I start doing sourdough, it's a little bit more convoluted. But right now we're just doing 5 grams of yeast. Doesn't seem like a lot by number, but it turns out to be, yeast is pretty light. There we go. We're just going to mix that in until it becomes cloudy. I'm going to set this aside to let the yeast start to proof. It'll start to foam and bubble. We're going to set that aside. We're going to move on to our slightly larger bowl, zero that out. Now we're going to put all of our dry ingredients together. This will include our flour, our salt, because this is just a very simple bread, nothing fancy. So we're just going to get our 500 grams of flour. Like I said, this is hard red wheat. It's great for making bread. It's got a good gluten structure to it. Now we're going to add our salt. Zero the scale out again. We just want 10 grams of salt. Now what the salt does, it does two things. The salt slows the yeast reaction down a bit. That way you have more time to work the flour, the dough. And it also helps tighten the gluten structure by absorbing some of that water. Exactly 10 grams, right there. Okay. Which makes the dough easier to handle, and it makes it go from that sticking to your hands all over the place to making it where you can work with it. So I'm just going to mix the salt into the flour. Just generally, it doesn't got to be good and perfect. And now all I have to do is let my yeast proof in its water, in its warm water. And then we will come back to this. And that's ready. So our yeast is now foamed up, meaning it's good and active. Usually what I would do at this point is I'm going to take my yeast, because I like to get my sweetener kind of thinned down when I go to mix it. I'm going to take my yeast mixture back onto the scale. Now I'm going to add the honey that I want. If you remember by my recipe, the honey that I want in here, just for sweetness sake, is going to be 20 grams or 4%. So I'm going to take my honey. I'm going to add 20 grams of honey, which isn't a whole lot. Just like that. A little bit. Yep. I'm going to go ahead and dissolve that into the water. Just makes it easier to incorporate with everything else, and it's kind of thinned down into the water. Now, we have everything we need. Everything is mixed. And now it's time to just add it to the flour. So, just slowly let it in. Try not to make a mess. Doesn't matter if you do, but you know, it's your kitchen. And one of these dough whisks is really nice for it. You just slowly work it back and forth. It starts to incorporate. Easy. And of course, as it starts to tighten, your goal is just to get all the flour incorporated into one kind of gooey dough ball. It's not going to resemble true bread dough just yet. It's going to kind of tear apart, kind of weird things. But you just want to get all the dry flour put into it. Nice and easy. Now, at this point, you may be like, well, my dough is all sticky and sticks to my hands and I can't work it. And it's like, well, that's actually normal. Most people at this point want to try and add flour to it, which you don't want to do. It'll just make it more dense. What you're going to do at this point is you're just going to kind of make sure that there's no lumps or clumps in it when you poke at it. It'll be sticky, don't worry about it. But once it looks like this, then what you're going to do is you're just going to cover it and you're going to leave it alone for about 30 minutes. Now I'm going to wash my hands. Quit. Now, you also don't want it to dry out. What I use for that, some people can use saran wrap or something like that. I found that using these nice little shower caps, with a little elastic band on them, works really good. Just put it over the top and just leave it alone. You're going to leave it alone from anywhere between 25 and 30 minutes. Usually I leave it for about 30 minutes, and this is called autolyzing. So you're letting the gluten in the flour absorb the water, and the gluten structure to just start to form a little bit. And you'll see, without adding any more flour, the structure of it will come together much better right after this first set of folds that I'm going to show you. But be back in 30 minutes, and I'll show you that. It's been 30 minutes. As you can see, the dough looks relatively like a mess. Now this is normal. You don't want to add a bunch of flour at this point, because if you add flour at this point, you're just going to make a mess. Now what I'm going to do though, to keep this from sticking to my hands, I'm going to use a bowl of water just to wet my hands, make kind of a slick sheen on my hands. And we're going to gather up this dough and we're going to do a quick fold. We're going to do it inside of the bowl. Now we're going to do what they call a coil fold. I'll show you that in just a second. But our main goal is not to make a dough just yet. We're just starting the gluten structure. So I'm going to wet my hands just a bit. I'm going to gather the dough up away from the sides of the bowl. A bit more water. And it should be sticky at this point. So you don't want to add any more flour. You'll just make it dense. So what we're going to do is our fold. I'm going to grab it by the center. I'm going to pull it up till it hangs. I'm going to lay it over itself, just inside the bowl, just like that. I'm going to turn it 90 degrees and perform the same thing. Pick it up, let it stretch, lay it down on itself. And at this same angle, I'm going to do this again. And then I'm actually going to turn it lengthwise. So all the folds are currently going this way. I'm actually going to roll it. So I'm going to take either end, doesn't really matter, lay it out, and just roll it in on itself. Nice and slow. You don't want to tear it. As you can see, it's already getting more structure. So it's already getting easier to work with. It's still going to be tacky, but as we work the structure a little bit better, it'll start to tighten up and it'll stick less and less. So what we don't want to do is overstress the dough early. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to let this rest again. I'm going to put it back in the bowl. I'm going to cover it again for 30 more minutes. I'm just going to let it rest. All we're doing at this point is building structure. We're going to do this process about 4 times, so it's going to take about 2 hours or so. In case you have to do a 5th one, it takes 2.5, so on and so forth. But for right now, we're going to let it rest. We'll come back in just a bit. So after the first 30 minutes, you see the dough looks glossy. That's the gluten coming together for us. Another tool, one of these, a nice dough scraper. So this is the first time I'm actually going to take it out of this bowl, and I'm actually going to put it on my breadboard here. Just make sure you get all of it. Now, the dough is still going to be pretty sticky, but it does hold up a lot better now. I'm just going to wet just my fingertips a little bit and do that same folding technique from before. Folding it over on itself. Let it rest for just a minute. Coil it over on itself. And then I'm going to slowly shape it into a ball. At this point, it really shouldn't stick very much. If it does, just use a little bit more water on your hands just to keep it sticking. All you're doing is you're rotating the dough up and away and then pulling it under itself. So you're kind of forming a skin. Just nice and easy. You're forming this skin on the outside, which will make it easier to handle. But once you've done that, and it's pretty tense, you're going to take your scraper, just pick it back up, put it in your bowl, set it for another 30 minutes. We're going to be working on our 3rd folding. As you can see, a little gassy. Exactly what you want. Bowl. And nice folds. Nice and fancy. Now if you start sticking to the board, just take your scraper and move under the dough. That way you're not tearing the dough apart. Fold it over on itself. I'm going to kind of slowly flatten it. It's got a little bit of tension. Should have done this first. Pull it. Fold it over itself. Turn it. Upside down. Slowly roll it in on itself. Nice and easy. A couple of drags. So you pull it into a nice ball shape again. Let's get a nice skin on it. And then right back in the bowl. We can do this one more time before we do a bulk rise. All we're doing with this is we're building up the gluten strength, overlapping the lattices as they were. Time for the last set. Open this up. Get our dough gathered up. Hands just a little bit. Roll it. Start drawing it on the board. Got a little too much water on the board. That's okay. Just dry it off a bit. There we go. You want there to be some, you don't want the board to get too wet. Otherwise you won't be able to get any tension on the dough when you pull it. Looks pretty good. So now what we're going to do is the bulk rise. So take it, put it back in here. We're going to let it roughly double in size. Takes about an hour to 2 hours depending on the temperature, but it should about double in size. As we can see, the dough is roughly doubled in size. You'll see all these large air pockets. We'll press those out as we form the dough. As you can see, this is the first time I'm actually adding any flour, and I just use a tea diffuser to scoop flour and dust it out. This is just to keep it from sticking to the board. And we're going to take our scraper. We're going to scrape the dough out onto our surface. So at this point, you're going to want to try and press the large air bubbles out, otherwise you'll get holes in the dough. We don't want that. And then we'll do a laminate shape. I'll show you how to do that. So all we're going to do, it's easy to work with. I'm going to do, put my hands just a little bit so I can press the dough. And I'm working all those really big bubbles out. We don't want big holes. I'm kind of making a flat shape. And I'm just going to use a regular bread pan for this one. It's the simplest to use without any extra steps. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our ends, we're going to fold them in, laminate the sides in, and then roll it from the ends inward. I'll show you. I'm going to take these, I'm going to lay them in, just like that. So you're kind of like sealing up your ends. You're going to take your front end, you're going to roll that up, just like so. And the light dusting of flour kept this where I can work with it while the inside is still tacky, which is what you want because you want the inside to stick to itself. Just like this. And turn it. I'm going to slowly roll it forward gently. You don't want to break that edge that you made. You're going to kind of ease it down a little bit and then close your ends. Nice and fancy. Just kind of roll it back and forth to get a little length out of it. Go in a bread pan. Alright. Close the ends. You're just kind of stitching the ends together. It doesn't have to be perfect. When it presses against the edge of the pan, it'll take care of most of that. Now I'm going to take my scraper, make sure I don't tear the bottom. I'm going to take it, lay it in a pre-greased bread pan, just like that. Nice and fancy. Like I said, I have cast iron and things we can do this in. It's just, bread pans are just simply easier because you can just grease them and they're good to go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that cover that you saw, that shower cap. I'm actually going to take some olive oil, just a little bit. And this is just to keep this plastic from sticking. So just make sure it's nice and coated. Cover it, just like that. And now you're just going to let it rise until it is about 1/4 of an inch to 1/2 inch or so above the edge of the pan. Once it's risen to that point, then you put it in the oven. Well, that'll be the next step. As we can see, the bread's risen pretty much at 1/2 inch above the edge of the pan that I want. I went ahead and preheated my oven to 390. Anywhere between 370 and probably 420 would be ideal. It depends on how dark you want the crust. I kind of want it in the middle. So we're going to start out with 30 minutes on 390, and that should be it. Let's go ahead and get the bread out. As we can see, it's got a nice golden top to it. I'm just gonna roll out like that. got a nice hollow sound to it, which means it's nice and fluffy. It's hot, of course. So you might be, tempted to cut into it. Warm bread is, it is really good. The only problem is that all the steam that's currently in here is setting the crumb. So you really want to let it set for at least 45 minutes to an hour. Let it come to almost room temperature to let that crumb form completely. And then we will cut it. Now the bread is cooled. Shouldn't have any problems cutting it. Just try this a little way. Nice slow cut. That's it. As you can see, nice, fluffy, soft, not dense. I probably cut it just a little too soon. It's still a little damp. That's okay. It will dry. So just like that, nice, easy white bread. I will do a video on sourdough and a 50-50 wheat blend, which is a little bit more complicated to make. But just like that, 4 ingredients, you can make your own white bread.